Hello and welcome to the Hypertrophy Odyssey chapter 238. It is the second day of the week, aka the special beam cannon workout. I am feeling pretty good. I'm very happy, very excited to get to Mother Base. Yes, I've come up with a name. That'll be probably a different episode, but to the basement. And I'm very excited to go there and start this lower body workout. But first, to go on to the main subject for today, because I wanted to talk about a little bit more of something that happened, go off on a little tangent from yesterday's entire video, which was I hate modern psychology. I dislike it a lot. Now, is all of it bad? No. But I think a lot of people have infiltrated that field that are doing absolutely nothing to move it forward. And I think that is a problem with all of academia in general. But that is, actually, I'll probably go into that a little bit as well when we get in there. But first, before I get in there, I have to say this. And this is something that I've alluded to probably in yesterday's video. And that is that if you see a psychologist and they have a psychologist, they are useless. They are quite literally useless. I do not understand those types of people. They make no sense to me, in the sense that it's like almost as if you're paying someone who is just a few lessons ahead of the next person, and then they're paying somebody to be a few lessons ahead of the next person. It's like if I started a business to teach piano, but I also took piano lessons and I just kind of whittled it down, you know what I mean? It's the same concept, but in a higher thing. And not only that, but dealing with people's issues, which is kind of astonishing to me. And if there's anybody that in the comments or anything that has an issue with me, please, I would love to hear the argumentation back against it, because realistically, why are you in this field if you can't solve anything, if that makes any sense? Now, you may have certain qualifications, sure, on paper, but the fact that you need to see somebody for your own things, I mean, shouldn't you be able to do it yourself? And of course, there are people that will say, a doctor doesn't always operate on themselves. Well, a lot of doctors don't trust other doctors, one. And two, depending on what it is, sometimes they will do shit on themselves. It all just depends if they're that good. I think there are obviously cases where they literally cannot. But at the same time, I think there are cases where doctors will perform surgeries on themselves if they can. So it is a thing. So it's not like too crazy, and besides, they'll probably self-diagnose anyway if they trust themselves enough to know. So, or run experiments on themselves, which is a whole other subject matter, because I think more people should be doing that anyways, regardless, but whole other subject matter in general. But I find it astonishing to me that people will get into the field of psychology and feel that it's the weird passing the buck along that has no end, really. I feel like this should be the end of it, right? But for some reason that isn't the end, and that is a big issue in my mind. I don't think that people should go to you as an expert and for it to end, and it should end at you. You shouldn't have to go to somebody to have it end to have it passed on to them, who hopefully will end it for you. That is quite literally insane. If you are like that or know somebody that's like that, they are in the wrong field. They need to get out of there, because they are not doing anybody any favors. They might be doing some favors, who knows? A broken clock is right twice a day. But at the same time, it's broken. So I'd rather get the working clock than the non-working clock. I mean, it works twice a day, but then every other moment you're fucked. So it is what it is. But that is just one of those things that irritates me about the general psychology field nowadays. It is predominantly overpowered by certain groups of people that don't really want to see the forwarding of the human psyche and or the things to help people in general. It is more of a generalized and bastardized versions of what it once was, to actually try to help people and try to figure out the problems of the world or the issues of the people, and try to get to the root causes and try to untangle that and truly help them. It feels like now it's more of you start to learn to live with what you have and just kind of live your life through that and all this other stuff. And it's less of a untangling the mess and more of a living with the mess, which Not good. Not good at all, because you could see that in a bunch of people, the amount of baggage that they carry around with them and all the things that go along with it. And when we get downstairs, or when we get to Mother Base, we'll probably go into more detail about all of those issues and what I see going on with that entire field, and how there's very few people that I would want to even learn about nowadays, because I think most of the stuff that's from the past is still applicable to today's psyche. There you go. But with that being said, I'll see you downstairs. All right, so started this day off with squats, which were pretty good. But anyways, back to the main subject matter. So I keep harping on the fact that I personally don't like the fact that there are some psychology people and or psychiatrists or psychologists, excuse me, because there is a difference, who insist on trying to help people but have their own psychologist. The reason why, for me personally, I'm not a fan of this is because of the fact that it is the equivalent of someone who, let's say, is a personal trainer who happens to be fat. Now, I understand there is a difference between coaching and being fat, but most of the time you would want the coach to have some sort of pedigree in whatever they're doing. So if they haven't done it on their own, at least have the ability to have said, hey, I coach X, Y, or Z, and thus is the same idea when it comes to psychology. And in reality, psychology really is something that is of the self. So because of that, if the person who you are seeing is not, well, grounded and or whole within themselves, and thus having to have their own psychologist, it kind of defeats the entire purpose, because you go to these people to try to basically get yourself in check. Well, at least your mental health, of course. But for some reason, they pass the buck on, which I don't understand and makes no sense. I already made the analogy before, but that's just why I feel like I just need to reiterate that it makes zero sense to me. If you have somebody like this, please immediately leave. And that's one of the other issues I personally have with modern psychology, is the focus on the contemporary, the things that are current, the things that are now, versus the things that have come before us and expanding on those things. Now, there are certain things that, of course, we've learned more from now than we have in the past, but I feel like there is a shunning of the past that keeps continually happening, because it seems as though for some reason whatever came in the past is old news, and thus we have to focus on the new shiny toy. But for some reason they don't realize that they were onto something in the past, and maybe they should go back and try to continue the work that those people have made. But for some reason they want to carve their own path and go into these weird niche areas that make absolutely zero sense to where the mind was already at and going. I understand why people would want to go into the contemporary, the new, the shiny, but also humans have been around for millions of years. Our minds have not changed extreme amounts. Sure, the stimuluses, the drugs, all that other stuff have come around that have been a little bit more modernized and intensified, have changed the brain a little, but our brains are relatively the same from back in the day. And I've already said that, but realistically, people are not respecting that. It's interesting. You're into the sciences, but you won't factor in the fact that evolution was millions of years, so it takes a while for things to change. So thus the past was probably right for some things. Just saying. Another issue I personally have with it is the insistence in the idea of living with the dragon. I know this isn't necessarily something I see all the time, but it is something that I see enough, where people will, let's say, get diagnosed with something and then they kind of just have to live with it. And I understand that there are certain things that obviously there's nothing you can do about it, but they don't even try to mitigate it and instead just excuse it away, and thus everybody else around them kind of has to suffer because of the fact that they just kind of live with it. It's kind of like let's just give a random example here. If I were to be socially awkward and then just say, oh, sorry, it's my autism, and then continue to just be socially awkward. I understand that that is something that people do and it happens and it sucks if you are. There are things that you can do if you have autism to
help out and make sure that you don't repeat the same things over and over again and try to fit better in society. Instead, we try to fit people around that and thus make them feel special, which I understand, but also is the issue because for some reason they don't want to slay the dragon and or try to do things to make sure that they quail or minimize the damages and or the dragon itself to be killed in their life. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I feel like a lot of the times that's the issue, is that they don't want to get better. They just want to live with whatever they have, officially label it and move on, which huge red flags there.
And we're back. Welcome to the workout debriefing. Exercises not filmed, none. Exercises skipped, also none. I got everything in, thankfully. So, tender. But anyways, back to the main subject matter at hand. The psychology field of today is not as good as it once was. And now at this point, I could probably be a little bit more honest and open as to why I feel like that is. It's because most likely a combination of the fact that there have been people who have infiltrated the sphere and kind of cultivated it into their own eyes without giving credence or any respect to those who have come before them, plus the influx of money, plus the need for tenure and thus the need to be creative in the sciences. But then all of a sudden, when you realize tenure is just a way just to make sure you have job security, because if you don't have job security, you're kind of fucked in a way. That plus the inability to have these people also be able to separate themselves from what they're working on because they have a specific type of personality that probably bleeds into their work way more than it probably should. There is also a diminishing level of interest in those who actually probably should get the actual help and those who are interested in actually learning because of the hurdles of academia, making it so individuals who actually want to pursue this as a career and or to the actual end goal, which is to help people, are alienated because the steps that are required in order to do it are so asinine and backwards that you have no choice but to be forced to be under the strict watch of somebody who will probably influence you in a terrible way because they have to teach you in their way and you have to learn under their tree, even though they probably are not doing it in the respect of those who came before them, but in a weird trying to pioneer in a new way, but at the end of the day is ultimately inferior to the things that came before them. But because they have to be new and renewing things in order to keep the ability to have the job that they have, they go down weird and different paths that have not been yet laid forth, that are inefficient as ones that have already been there in the past. I personally despise a lot of that because it puts so many barriers up for people to be able to actually do something about this, and thus making the entire industry a joke. And it sucks because then when you see it, it's laughed at. It's something that you cannot take seriously anymore because it has been destroyed and bastardized by those who think that they are helping it, but do not have the self-awareness to realize that they have destroyed it, and now they have destroyed it beyond comprehension to the point now where you look at something like BetterHelp and laugh. I mean, it's so frustrating because it is something that could help thousands of people, but unfortunately it has been perverted by money and the idea of job security and certain demographics of people that need to be in everything for some godforsaken reason, and also those who do not allow ideas to actually fluctuate into the world. Instead, we have to have people that are too concerned by the bottom dollar to actually allow people to get better. There is something related to healthcare on this, but that's a whole other subject. I'm not going to get into that because that's a whole different field, and I don't want to delve deep into that because that's a whole other story. But for this in particular, it's just frustrating because it would be something I would love to do. I would love to get into this. I would love to have a degree and actually make a living out of this, but also not be stupid about it and be like, oh yeah, I need to make millions, or I need to get a doctorate. God, the doctorate thing is a whole other story too. But the issue with it is that you waste so much time trying to climb up the ladder just to hope and pray that you can be on your own eventually, that by the time that you are, you're probably 40 in a bajillion dollars worth of debt and maybe somewhat successful, depending if you can find anybody that actually is willing to give you your time, their time and money to actually seek you out. Plus, you aren't living on the teat of the insurance companies, because realistically, that's, I feel like a lot of them are living off the teat of that. So it is just saddening to see the current state of such a once great and heralded field now be destroyed by people who will never respect it and wonder why they're a joke. And it sucks. And with that being said, tell me what you think in the comments below. I'd love to know your thoughts and opinions about this one. This one maybe a little bit more controversial, but yesterday was also pretty controversial. I have a lot of negative feelings I think I need to get out of my system right now. I don't know what it is. Maybe something in the air. Maybe it's a full moon. Who knows? But there is just something where I'm feeling very down, and I want to be attacking certain things because certain things have pissed me off beyond belief recently. Well, I wouldn't say that, but they've been just irritating me, and I feel like I haven't had really any good, like, fun stories to talk about. I don't know. We'll have to see why or where that might make a turn. Hopefully it'll be soon, but hopefully we'll see. But with that being said, thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Please share this video with anybody who may or may not like it. I will be back on tomorrow with a new video. Thanks again for watching. I really do appreciate it. I will see you in the next one. Keep it heavy. Stay safe out there. Stay warm. It's starting to get a little nicer outside, but stay warm anyway if you're cold at a cold place. Peace.